Today on How It's Made. Turf grass, the green grass of home, brought in from somewhere else. Beef jerky, marinated meat that's hung out to dry. Nice. Wood chippers, we branch out to see how dead wood is for the chop. And bowling pins, we know this report will be right up your alley. But first, with commercially cultivated grass, you can have the perfect lawn in minutes. It comes in pre-grown sheets, fresh from the turf farm, ready for transplant. First produced in the middle of the last century, commercially grown grass continues to change the domestic landscape, thwarted only by a hosepipe ban. If you haven't got time to sit around watching the grass grow, then with commercially cultivated turf, there's no need. Upon delivery, workers simply unroll it and trim it. It's like laying a carpet, and in fact, it is a living carpet. With regular watering, it will start to put down its own roots. It should take about 3 weeks to become established, and then it's time to dust down the lawnmower. It starts with a seed variety appropriate for climate. This farm is in the American Midwest, and that calls for a cool season species, Kentucky bluegrass, but it will be green. They compost grass clippings and leftover turf in a large pile and use it to enrich the farm's soil. Using an aerator, holes are made in the soil. This loosens it, allowing nutrients and oxygen to infiltrate. Aerating also breaks up the rootstock left over from the previous crop. And since grass is a perennial, a new crop will grow from these leftovers, and they'll only need to plant seed every 3 or 4 crops. After only about 5 weeks, the grass has begun to sprout. A sprinkler system helps spur the growth. It's called a central pivot irrigation system, a wheeled tower that is 366 meters long with numerous sprayers that slowly circles the field to give the grass a methodical watering. Next up is the fertilizer. It'll give the grass the energy it needs to flourish. The 3 main ingredients are nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. But the mix also contains micronutrients like iron, zinc and magnesium for an extra boost. They fertilize the field typically 4 to 5 times a year, using a supersized version of a domestic rotary spreader. Pulled by a tractor, it scatters fertilizer out of the back to cover a lot of terrain. An application of herbicide keeps the weeds at bay as the grass grows, and the blades become denser. Once it's thick enough, it should resist weed itself. They mow it 3 to 4 times a week, never cutting more than 1/3 of the total growth. Anything more would cause the grass to focus on repairing top growth at the expense of establishing a robust root system. When an ordinary lawn tractor can't cut the mustard, they bring out a mega version. It has 3 mower decks, each with 3 blades, and can mow an area the size of 10 football fields in 1 hour. The clippings are left behind for added fertilizer. It takes about 18 months for the roots to fully develop and form a thick mass. That means the turf grass can now be harvested without falling apart. As the harvester moves forward, rollers at the front compress the grass. Behind the rollers, a wide blade cuts the turf at the roots. At the sides, spatula-like mechanisms lift the turf onto a conveyor. Once there, another blade cuts it into strips. The strips move up to a device that rolls them up, just like you'd roll a sleeping bag. The conveyor transfers the rolls to a platform, where a robotic arm retrieves them and stacks them on a pallet, 5 at a time. When the stack is big enough, the harvester lowers the pallet. A A forklift collects the rolled turf for shipment. This turf has been cut to order for same-day delivery. They'll lay it fresh from the farm, so it doesn't have time to dry out and turn yellow. This grass has been a year and a half in the making. It's now ready to transform a bare garden into a lush one. No doubt making the neighbours green with envy. If you're craving a meaty snack that packs a good dose of protein, then some beef jerky might just be the ticket. Eating dried, cured strips of meat dates back to the ancient cultures of South America, and it's thought that jerky may be an English mispronunciation of a native word for burnt meat. Beef jerky is no longer a food of subsistence. It's now a popular snack food that comes in a variety of flavours. The process starts with beef rounds, a lean cut from the muscular hind quarter of the cow. There is just a bit of fat, enough to give the meat good flavour. Workers put the beef rounds through a slicer, which cuts them into thin strips of identical width, so that the jerky pieces come out as uniform as possible. The direction in which the slicer cuts, as well as the thickness of the slices, are calculated to optimise flavour and tenderness. The marinating will further tenderise the meat. Some producers inject the marinade prior to slicing. This company marinates after slicing, so that the marinade is sure to tenderise and flavour every slice. After loading a small batch of meat into a rotating drum, the marinade is added, a secret recipe comprising both dry and liquid seasonings. The meat and marinade spin together for over an hour, and by the time the strips come out of the drum, they're soaked in marinade. Another 24 hours in the marinade and they're ready to go into the smokehouse. Workers lay the marinated beef strips on stainless steel rods. They're spaced well apart to allow the hot air to penetrate from all angles. Once they fill a rod, they hang it on a rolling rack. A rack holds 100 rods, roughly 110 kilograms of beef strips. Each rack goes into its own individual smokehouse, inside which two simultaneous processes occur. Water-soaked hardwood chips burn, slowly smoking the meat. And the jerky also cooks slowly at low heat, no higher than 82 degrees Celsius. The variety of beef jerky dictates the type of hardwood they use. For example, sweeter flavours such as honey barbecue or teriyaki require smoke with hickory or applewood, whereas for more savoury or spicy flavours, they use mesquite wood. Over the course of 5 to 7 hours in the smokehouse, the circulated warm air gradually dries out and cures the meat, and the smoke from the wood infuses it with flavour. Samples are taken from each fully smoked batch to measure the thickness. The required thickness is 3 to 4 millimetres. After the strips have been cut to approximately 8 centimetres long, the jerky enters an automated scale, which weighs out the quantity per packet. Meanwhile, an automated packaging machine heat seals the bottom and sides of printed plastic film, forming a pouch, then inserts a resealable zip. Then it prints on the batch number and best buy date. The machine then pulls apart each individual pouch and flushes the inside with nitrogen. Nitrogen forces out fresh food's worst enemy, oxygen. Then the machine drops in additional ammunition, that tiny oxygen-absorbing packet you find. Now the pouch is ready to receive its beef jerky. In the smokehouse, the raw beef lost about 3/4 of its weight as the moisture inside evaporated and the fat cooked off. The sealed pouches are now moved to the boxing and shipping area. Every 5 minutes, quality control technicians take a sealed pouch off the line to measure the nitrogen and oxygen levels inside. Earlier on, they tested samples from every single batch coming out of the smokehouse to make sure the slow cooking process killed off all the bacteria in the beef and dried it sufficiently. The jerky can boast a shelf life of 14 months. There's food for thought. Chew on that. Coming up, why don't you take the weight off your pins and see how they make wooden ones for your local bowling alley? And we visit a factory where everything is chipper, including the products they make, bright orange wood chippers. Join us after the break. The wood chipper was invented in Germany in 1884. Today's commercial-sized chippers devour wood debris and even entire trees in mere seconds. Spitting out chips that can be used as mulch for your garden makes the wood chipper one mean recycler. Whether it's a fallen tree or just a few broken limbs, a wood chipper will sink its industrial teeth into the problem and transform it into something useful. There are different kinds of chippers, but this one is a drum style. It has a feed wheel with serrated edges that draws wood into the revolving drum. Inside, knives tear into the wood, chopping it into little pieces. It's the supersized equivalent of a paper shredder. To make our chipping drum, rollers curl a rectangular steel sheet to transform it into a cylinder. The gap between the rollers determines the cylinder's diameter. After a few passes through the rollers, the ends of the rectangle meet and it becomes round. At the next station, a worker cuts 4 large rectangular holes into the cylinder using a plasma torch. The location of the holes is staggered. Each hole will be equipped with a blade and a deep pocket for catching the wood chips. He now inserts those pockets into the slots and welds them to the drum. The staggered location of the blade pockets means that no matter where the tree branch ends up in the drum, it will have contact with the chipper blades. Those blades will be installed later. Next, he welds the end caps to the chipper drum. They have pre-cut holes for a shaft and for accessing the inside of the drum. Then the drum spins and sensors pick up vibrations which would indicate an imbalance. A computer analyzes the data and decides how much weight needs to be added to the drum and where. A technician locates the spot on the drum using this gauge. Once he finds it, he marks it. A metal weight is then welded to the mark. Just like the wheels on your car, a wood chipper drum needs to be balanced in order to run smoothly. 4 super sharp blades are installed horizontally above the blade pockets and are bolted down tightly to withstand a spinning speed of 1200 RPM. Once the drum has been equipped with a shaft and a fan for moving the wood chips out, it's lowered onto the base. A crane does the heavy lifting as a worker guides the shaft bearings into the mounts. Now he adds an upper housing to protect the bearings from debris. The cowl is next, readily equipped with a chute for ejecting the wood chips. They attach the hood to the base and this encloses the wood chipper drum to keep the chipping action under wraps. Moving to the other side now, they install feed rollers and another chute. They activate the feed rollers by hand and check the distance between them and the chipper drum to confirm that there's adequate clearance. It's now time for its power plant, and a diesel engine is steered towards the chipper and lowered into position. They thread a drive belt around the engine pulley and link it to one that's been attached to the drum's side bearings. they complete that installation and install the tyres. The wood chipper now gets its primer and a coat of paint. They use a polyurethane paint developed for military vehicles. This tough finish will resist scratching as tree trunks and branches are dragged through it. They paint the wood chipper a brilliant orange, so it will stand out on the worksite. Once the paint is cured, they protect the drive belt with a metal cover. They transfer lettering onto the side, detailing the make and model of the wood chipper. After 9 days of work, the wood chipper is ready for action. And with its industrial teeth, it's fair to say, bark is worse for its bite. 10-pin bowling is popular worldwide. An estimated 95 million people take part in the sport. And amazingly, archaeologists have found evidence of bowling-type games from as long as 5,000 years ago. However, the factory where they're made is most definitely up to date. The sport's international governing body dictates very strict and precise specifications for pin manufacturing to ensure pins worldwide react uniformly to the ball. As dictated, this bowling pin factory uses hard maple wood with a moisture level within regulation range. Workers weigh the slabs and calculate which ones they'll group together to produce a regulation weight pin. 3 slabs are glued together to form a starting block for a single pin. Then they stack several blocks in a vise and clamp them tightly until the glue dries, about 15 minutes. A few light taps with a rubber mallet will separate any stuck-together blocks. A custom-designed machine then drills 3 holes in each block, hollowing out what will be the centre of a bowling pin. This also removes some weight and leaves space for the wood to expand and contract with humidity levels. They lay the block in a carousel vise and glue a small slab of wood to each side. After 12 to 15 minutes under pressure, the glue sets, giving a wider block. They transfer it to another carousel, which runs it through a planer. This removes globs of dried excess glue and levels the top and bottom surfaces. The process is repeated and wood slabs are glued to the 2 remaining sides. After the glue fully cures for 24 hours, those sides also go through the planer. The block is now ready for the bowling pin shape. Workers mount the block on a lathe via the hole in the bottom of the base ring. As the lathe spins, cutters gradually shave away wood and the pin shape forms. This whole operation takes about 45 seconds. Excess wood is removed top and bottom, and the machine cuts and drills those surfaces smooth. A nylon ring goes into the hole in the pin's base. Next up, an injection moulding machine. It coats the entire pin surface in liquefied nylon, then quickly cools the nylon solid. This protects the wooden pin with a hard and durable covering. Now it's weighed to make sure it falls within regulation range, between 1.5 and 1.6 kilograms. Finally, a printing machine spins the pin under an ink pad to apply decorative stripes. Then it's the manufacturer's logo. The ink dries to the touch in just 5 minutes and fully cures in 24 hours. Bowling pins crafted from wood slabs in just 40 minutes, plus ink curing time. That's impressive. You could say we're bowled over.